Okay, I'm back and I got my grease. Sorry about that, just kicked the camera a little bit. I basically focused a little closer so you could actually get a better idea of what we're doing and how we're doing it. This is just a little bit of grease here, and what I wanted to do was just lubricate this. It helps it stay in where I want it to be a little better, and it just basically it's nice to do. So now that won't fall out accidentally as I'm fussing around with this. So anyway, so basically the fourth gear cluster done. Now what we have to do now is to look at the synchro ring. Now the synchro ring, without the synchros, all this is just a fork selector ring and the synchro hub on the inside. There are 3 tabs that give it a indexing feature when it goes in and out and helps it from stopping. Now also there's a spring in here. I don't know if you could see that, but the spring basically retains these 3 pins and selectors, and they should be below, if you could see that, they should be below the bends on the 3 pins on either side, and one end, and let me take one out so I can show you. One end has a little bend on it. What that end is when you're inserting it into this, you insert it in between the inside of one of those little pins, and then you just go underneath it around, and basically that's it, and it's done. Now, you know, I had this apart and cleaned it up a little bit, but again, this transmission, given the fact that the car sat for 40 years, part of the time underwater, I am so surprised at how well everything cleaned up on the inside of the unit. If you see here, the synchro hub has a kind of a ridge side where you can see the splines that go onto the shaft, and on the other side it's basically clear. Okay, on both sides of these, the way this works is that you have to have 2 synchros. One synchro for the 4th gear, one synchro for the 3rd gear. And the synchros has 3 tabs in here. These 3 tabs straddle those 3 pins that are inside. So in essence, once you have the 2 synchros in on both sides, this unit slides back and forth, engages the brass synchro to the actual synchro on the gear cluster, and engages the gear and locks the gear into place. So that's what whatever gear that you're in. And as you see, everything looks good. The cones are nice and clean, the bores are nice and clean, the actual this shouldn't wear as much. This is the sacrificial part, but if you could see here, basically it's nice and crisp. And even the original synchros, given the car only had about 27,000 miles on it, is very nice. But as I said before, I just rather change these parts out and to start from fresh. But you know, these, if I opened up a Gearbox and looked at it, I would have no problem using these. Now again, R&D Enterprises, what we have here is Synchro 1 and 2. And there's 2 synchros that are identical, 1 and 2. These belong in the back here. And then you have 2 other synchros that are for 3 and 4. And these are the synchros that you use in the front. So what we'll do is we'll take out a handy little razor blade, if I could find it. Oh, this is fun. I put things down, and for some odd reason they just kind of disappear. Here we go. So anyway, take my razor blade, give it a little slit on the bottom here because I like to keep this packaging intact. And this is the new synchro ring. Now I know on some Triumphs the synchro rings are basically, how should I say, the new reproduction synchro rings are not as good as the old ones, but actually I see absolutely no difference in these synchros. Actually I do. The old synchro rings, the teeth appear to be a little bit wider. Not sure. The inside of the cones, and you can see that ridge in there on both units, are extremely good, and that's a wear item because that's what wears on the cone of the shafts. So again, what we see here is brand new synchro. We're going to put that in. Let's put some grease in here. Okay, and we're going to put that with the 3 indentations straddling those pins in the synchros. And okay, they both have about the same play. Actually, this one has a little bit more. Let me just see if they're identical in size. And it's probably, yeah, it's probably my imagination. They seem a little looser. Okay, so that's on the one side. And oh yeah, another thing is these ridges, one flat, the ridges face forward towards the front of the car. So we got the one synchro ring in here, the springs are in there, and then let's open up this next package, and just to be neat, we'll put this in back in the bag along with the roller bearing. And again, these things are like brand new anyway. Not sure why I'm changing it, but what the hell. Put the old one back in so we don't get those confused. Okay, so these are the used parts. Okay, again, synchro. This will go on the other side and will just fit in like that. Okay. Now, what we have here is this will now slide in the tip, but we first have to get the third gear in place. Just kind of grease it up a little bit. And here's the synchro cone, and this thing just spins on here, so it should easily just float on there like that. Okay, and then once that's on, and remember I said the spline side and the flat side, here's the spline with the hub that goes towards the rear. And this thing would just slide on like that. Hope you can see that. it is looking like it's going to want to be tapped on, which is fine. Just a little tap. Again, if I was in my garage, I'd be using my press, but this is simply enough. And we're just basically making sure everything is going on straight. And just make sure this thing is still on those 3 pins, and so you don't crush them if you hit this thing down too hard. Actually, what would work really well here is a socket. And I think I'm going to get a socket only because it'll make life easier, and I don't want to mess up the splines on the main shaft. So if you bear with me.